The Court of Appeal have just announced their verdict on the appeal to the Dartmoor camping ban scandal case, and we won! But MP Anthony Mangnall is still trying to screw us by attempting to pass a bill that will once again make camping on Dartmoor without permission illegal. This is a story involving a greedy landowner.
I think they run the risk of losing sight of what we're here to do, which is try and make money. That's our job, is to make money. I'm unashamed, we try to make money.
A lying MP who's taken donations from said landowner, and the British people being stripped of their rights in order to further enrich an already wealthy multi-millionaire landowner. Alexander Darwall, a wealthy hedge fund manager, bought 4,000 acres of Dartmoor National Park back in 2011. Dartmoor National Park was deemed the only place in England and Wales where the public could legally camp without permission under the Dartmoor Commons Act 1985, which states that the public shall have a right of access to the commons on foot and on horseback for the purposes of open-air recreation. That was until Alex Darwall brought a case to the High Court arguing that camping didn't constitute an open-air recreational activity. In January 2023, the High Court ruled in his favour, making wild camping without permission illegal in all of England and Wales. Darwall then promptly struck a deal with the DMPA to start paying him an undisclosed amount of taxpayer money to give restricted, permissive access to the national park. The Dartmoor National Park Authority were granted leave to appeal this verdict in the Court of Appeal, arguing that camping is indeed an open-air recreational activity under the rights of access granted by the Dartmoor Commons Act 1985. Alex Darwall tried to blackmail the Dartmoor National Park Authority by threatening to remove the permissive access to Dartmoor if they went ahead and appealed the verdict.
By taking an appeal forward, you risk imperiling that for the public. In short, you do not need to pursue this appeal. You should not pursue this appeal. And if you do, you risk creating a situation which is worse than the current one. If you fail, you risk landowners withdrawing permission.
The DMPA decided to appeal the verdict anyway, arguing that the law's clear purpose was to establish rights of open-air recreation on private land, subject to a number of safeguards and limitations, but not excluding camping. The opposition argued that camping is to escape from the open air and that it isn't recreation because you're sleeping. This guy's obviously never been camping. Luckily, and as it should, the appeal went in the public's favour, and wild camping in Dartmoor National Park without permission is now once again a legal activity. But there have been some dodgy dealings and some seediness behind the scenes that still threaten this. And Conservative MP for Totnes, Anthony Mangnall, seems hell-bent on passing some new laws which will be incredibly detrimental to the public and benefit absolutely no one but his donor, Alex Darwall. Back in 2020, shortly before the court proceedings were initiated, Alex Darwall donated £5,000 to Anthony Mangnall's campaign. Then, after the first court verdict in January, Anthony Mangnall originally completely refused to comment on the wild camping ban and only ended up releasing this statement after huge public outcry and calls of corruption.
Hi everyone, I thought I'd just do a quick video to talk about the decision by the High Court regarding Dartmoor National Park. It's clear that there's a great deal of misinformation out there. So the first thing should be said is that wild camping isn't being banned and the right to roam is not being restricted. So what actually happened this weekend was that Dartmoor National Park said that Clause 10, Section 1 does not give the right in recreational activities to allow wild camping. It was a clarification. And what needs to happen now is either an amendment to the Dartmoor National Park Act to include wild camping, or for the Dartmoor National Park Authority to come to an agreement with the landowners that own land surrounding and on Dartmoor National Park. I hope that they can do a combination of both, actually come to agreement with landowners and look to try and change the rules on this matter. The second thing to make about this point is that I received a donation from the individual who put the case to the High Court. That donation has had no impact on the decisions I make. It's not restricted me in saying anything. It's not made me in favour of one position or another. But I am, as it turns out, in favour of wild camping, in favour of the right to roam, and in favour of protecting Dartmoor National Park. I've never had another donation from that individual. I've never discussed this matter with the individual, and there's absolutely no ability for members of Parliament to get involved in legal processes, nor should they, which is why I've been reluctant to comment on that issue. So hopefully that clears things up. As I say, I've got work to do to make sure that we can ensure that Dartmoor National Park remains open and available for everyone, as well as trying to secure more money to help secure its future.
I exchanged a few emails with Anthony Mangnall in which he further insisted Alex Darwall's donation had no influence influence on him. He also refused to answer my question, which was whether he supported enshrining into law the right to wild camp without permission on Dartmoor, or whether he supported camping that requires permission from the landowners and for them to get paid for it. Well, his intentions became clear after permission was granted for the DMPA to appeal the verdict. Anthony Mangnall lied to Parliament in a bid to pass a bill that will bypass the verdict of the appeal. The law Anthony Mangnall is trying to pass would enshrine into law that A. Camping in Dartmoor National Park must be permissive and can be rescinded at any time. B. That landowners like his donor Alex Darwall will be incentivised or paid for this permissive access. And C. That appoints more landowners to the Dartmoor National Park Committee, expanding their influence within the Dartmoor National Park Authority. The thing is, Anthony Mangnall lied to Parliament by saying that landowners had no representation within the Dartmoor National Park Committee.
The fact that landowners have no representation on the Dartmoor National Park Committee should be a cause for concern and immediately rectified.
In reality, 13 out of the 19 DMPA board members actually own land within the Dartmoor National Park boundaries, and 3 of them own huge pieces of land in the area. So the landowners are already very well represented on the Dartmoor National Park Committee, which Anthony Mangnall must have known when addressing Parliament, seeing as it's all declared on the Register of Members' Interests. Mangnall himself has to register any interests, and thus must be fully aware of this. It's hard to believe that he would argue this as a main point in Parliament without first researching it. And considering it took me 30 seconds to find this information, Anthony Mangnall either intentionally lied to Parliament or is utterly incompetent. It would seem Anthony Mangnall is angling for his donor Alex Darwall to be appointed to the Dartmoor National Park Committee. Bringing forward this law was a safeguard for landowners like Alex Darwall in case the appeal didn't go their way. And now it hasn't. The bill threatens to completely overturn the appeal verdict. Anthony Mangnall disguised his bid for this new law in a necessity to prioritise the environment and agriculture over recreation.
Recreational activity is critically important to human health, but it should not come at the expense or above that of environmental or agricultural activities that are present upon the moorland.
Yet this in itself is a contradiction. Agriculture is an incredibly environmentally destructive activity, and along with raw sewage dumps is the main reason our rivers are in such disrepair. This law would allow landowners to go against the wishes of Natural England, who recently published a report which expressed huge concern for the environmental degradation and destruction of wildlife in Dartmoor National Park, thanks to harmful agricultural practices. They proposed reducing livestock grazing levels in winter to prevent the destruction of the national park, but Anthony Mangnall published a letter speaking out against this, showing how farcical his concern for the environment really is. Oh, and guess what? Anthony Mangnall's donor, Alex Darwall, is a cattle farmer on Dartmoor. His donor, Alex Darwall, also used concern for the environment as a main argument in the first court case, despite releasing a flock of pheasants in a protected woodland which endangered a rare species of beetle. Where were Anthony Mangnall and Alex Darwall's environmental concerns for that? It also must be noted that Anthony Mangnall has consistently voted to allow water companies to dump raw, untreated sewage in our rivers, decimating our environment. Shows how concerned he really is for the environment, doesn't it? It would seem that environmental protection is a useful argument for passing this law that would remove our right to wild camp on Dartmoor without permission, funnel even more taxpayer money into Darwall's pocket to give him more decision-making power over the national park, and give him free range of Dartmoor National Park to farm his cattle, despite the destructive environmental consequences. The most worrying part of the bill Anthony Mangnall is proposing is that it doesn't specifically relate to camping. The enhanced access Mangnall speaks of could very well end up being applied to the right to roam, walking, cycling, horseback riding, rock climbing, and all the other open-air recreational activities for which we have rights under the Dartmoor Commons Act 1985. This bill is a disastrous perversion of power, a further crackdown on the people's rights which will destroy the environment with one goal: to divert more taxpayer money and power to Anthony Mangnall's donor, Alex Darwall.
I think they run the risk of losing sight of what we're here to do, which is try and make money. That's our job, is to make money. I'm unashamed, we try to make money.
The next parliamentary hearing on the bill will be in November, and I urge everyone watching this to loudly reject this oppressive bill.